welcome to Talon's Super Bowl 50 preview on BCTV. I'm Malliaros, and I'm joined by Steve McAlee, Kyle Maslan, and David Sullivan. This Sunday, the Denver Broncos and Carolina Panthers will face off at Levi's Stadium for the World Championship. Gentlemen, there are a lot of storylines heading into this game. Let's start with Steve. Steve, what are some things you're looking for in this game?
Hey, I'm just excited about this game just because it's the Super Bowl. And it's at Levi's Stadium, which is really cool, beautiful, out in San Francisco. But I'm looking at this game from the quarterback perspective. And you come into every Super Bowl, and it's always about the quarterbacks. I mean, you know, if your team's in the Super Bowl, your quarterbacks had a big year. But this one carries a lot of significance for me. You look on the AFC side with Peyton Manning. This could be Peyton Manning's last game, last Super Bowl. And it raises the question for me, what does the game, win or lose, do for his legacy, if anything? Because you think about, if he wins another Super Bowl, that's huge. But does it really change what Peyton Manning is or what he's done? He'll never have as much as Montana, never as much as Brady. So what does the game mean for him? On the other side of the ball, you look at Cam Newton. They're the favorites. Panthers are coming in as the favorites. So if Cam Newton goes out and wins a dominant performance or not, just wins the game, he is now elevated to the ultra level of sports stardom, up there with LeBron James and Stephen Curry. He's the next guy. He's the man for the future of the NFL. And whether that lasts, whether that continues for the Carolina Panthers and Cam Newton is still a long way to be seen. But I'm very interested to see how the game plays out for those two, because it's two different storylines on both sides of the ball, and it's the end of a great career, possibly for Peyton Manning, or the beginning of stardom for Cam Newton.
Well, I agree with you. I think it's all about the quarterbacks. You have Peyton. He's the first quarterback to go to 4 Super Bowls with 4 different coaches. It shows how smart he is, and that, I think, is going to be his biggest key entering this game. It's going to be how smart he can be against the Carolina defense. And with Cam, it's about the young stud. Everyone thought Andrew Luck was going to be the future face of the NFL. If Cam Newton wins this game, it's Cam Newton. Andrew Luck's taking on the back burners. It's going to be Newton first, then Wilson, and Luck second, and third, I should say. And I really think it's all about the quarterbacks in this game, and the best quarterback has the best game is going to win this.
Now, Kyle, do you think that Peyton Manning has to go out there and throw 300 yards and 3 touchdowns to win this game, or do you think he needs to play more of a game manager role as he has in the past few games?
He needs to be a game manager. Peyton Manning's arm is not what it was, and he can't. I don't think he physically can throw for 300 yards. Against the Patriots, he threw for under 200 and won the game. His key is not throwing interceptions. He threw 17 picks last year, and he didn't play a full season. The 2 games that he lost all year, he threw an average 3 picks a game. 6 picks in 2 games. If he protects the ball and lets his defense and his running game do what they need to do, and then he just sprinkles it in with key passes at key spots, that's all Peyton's got to do.
All right, David, now what do you think if Peyton does win this game? He's 2-3 in Super Bowls for his whole career, gets him to an above 500 record in the playoffs. What do you think that does for his legacy? Do you think it changes anything, as Steve had asked earlier?
I think it does pretty much dramatically affect his legacy because he's established himself as one of the best regular season quarterbacks of all time. He has the most touchdown throws, he's the most yards, and the most wins. However, a constant knock on him is his lack of playoff success. He's lost more playoff games than anyone ever. He's lost 9 in the first round. And I think that by doing this win and getting a second Super Bowl, he puts himself in the next tier. He shows that he's not just a regular season stat machine, and he shows he's a clutch player. Everyone says Brady's clutch with 4 Super Bowl wins. However, this past week, Peyton Manning has moved 3-2 on Brady in the postseason. So that would give him a big edge. And if he wins this, it would be his 200th win, which would just be a huge number. Plus, he'll have 2 rings like his brother. So Thanksgiving will be less awkward.
All right, great points, David. Another matchup we're looking at here is the Broncos front 7 against the Panthers offense, and specifically Cam Newton and his mobility. Now in the playoffs so far, Cam Newton's just averaged about 2 yards per carry scrambling, but he's been doing great things from the pocket with a 70% completion percentage, only 1 turnover so far in 2 games. So guys, how do you think the front 7 of the Broncos stacks up against the Panthers offensive line?
Well, I feel like they're one of the best front 7s in football. So if anyone's a shot, the Broncos have a shot. The hardest thing with Cam is he's the size of a linebacker. If you stack him up next to Von Miller and DeMarcus Ware, I don't think you could tell which one was the quarterback. Everyone talks about how hard it is to tackle Big Ben. I think it might be even harder to tackle Cam Newton. I've heard that they might use Von Miller as a spy instead of a pure pass rusher, and that could really change the dynamic. I think their goal is to keep in the pocket and keep pressure on him and not let him feel comfortable, not necessarily sacking him.
I think a spy would be effective on Cam Newton. I don't think teams have tried that maybe enough this year. And I think with a mobile quarterback, with all the threats that Cam Newton brings, I think it's probably very effective. But you look back at the AFC Championship game, Tom Brady was hit a lot. Tom Brady does not like to be hit. Now, Tom Brady's not as mobile as Cam Newton. But if they can bring that pressure in off the edge, and I would say that the edge of the Panthers' offensive line is weak. in some respects. So you bring that edge off the line. You don't let Cam get outside. Some of those design runs might not be effective. Do they even try those design runs? Because that was always a threat with the Panthers, is that there's plays in their system that Cam Newton, he knows he's running on before the play's even called. Or he can audible into it, depending on what he sees out there. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what they do. I think a spy could be effective, have a linebacker waiting for him if he does get out of the pocket. But one thing's for sure, the Broncos defense has played great all year. They contained arguably the best quarterback of all time in the AFC Championship game. We'll see what they can do against a really athletic, maybe the most athletic quarterback in the NFL right now.
Great point, Steve. One very interesting thing that we found in our research today was when he's forced out of the pocket and forced to create, Cam Newton actually has a passer rating of 71, but when he's contained in the pocket, he has a very, very high passer rating. So flushing him out of the pocket, as you guys said, would be a great thing. Now, fellas, what are some matchups that we're looking at on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball? Who should Josh Norman cover? Demaryius Thomas or Emmanuel Sanders?
Well, the Panthers' defense is not a pure man-to-man defense. They're like the Seahawks. Josh Norman will cover one side the same way Richard Sherman covers one side. So I think a key for Peyton is to make sure you have Demaryius and Sanders away from Norman. Norman is going to pass off. He's not going to pick a guy and stick with him. He's going to go to his side. He's going to stay out by the numbers. He's not going to go switch sides. He's not going to go to the slot. He's very easy to game plan against.
I would say Greg Olsen is going to be the matchup, and is TJ Ward going to be healthy enough? Who's going to guard him? For the Broncos, he's been a weapon all year for Cam Newton, and Cam Newton has not hesitated to go to him a lot. Greg Olsen's a really good tight end and had a great year, so I think you got to figure out a way to contain him with a little bit of a banged up defense. To the Broncos, I'd say that's the matchup to really look out for, because if it's not covered correctly, it could be huge for the Panthers.
Yeah, one very fascinating thing last week was TJ Ward pretty much contained Rob Gronkowski the entire game, but I believe once Rob Gronkowski got free of TJ Ward, because TJ Ward went out with injury, Rob Gronkowski, he had that long catch in the fourth quarter. He also had a touchdown. Rob Gronkowski turned back into Rob Gronkowski once TJ Ward was injured. So if TJ Ward's not good to go, I think Greg Olsen could be a major concern for the Broncos. Now, David, are you looking at any X factors for this game, any key matchups?
I think Ted Ginn could be a really deadly matchup. He's just got such an explosive speed, and with the strength of Cam Newton's arm, it could cause trouble for the Broncos secondary if he is not contained or well covered. He's just got such speed that he's matchup troubles all across the board.
Very good points.
The problem with Ginn is he needs to learn how to catch the ball. He's done a better job this season, but he's on his third team. He was a number 8 overall pick. He needs to catch the ball. And you can say the same thing with Demaryius Thomas. Demaryius Thomas had over 20 drops so far this year. Whichever team gets a case of the drops is not going to be in a good position.
With the strength of some of the Broncos secondary, you look at guys like Harris and people like that, I'm not looking to Ted Ginn or maybe even Kotri. I think you're going to have to look at, like I said, who's going to guard Olsen? How's that going to factor into things? I think an X factor is Corey Brown as the third receiver for the Panthers. After the two cornerbacks, and you have the injury with Ward as a safety, Corey Brown could be a huge X factor, and he could be open, a target that Cam Newton might be looking to.
All right. Well, thanks so much, guys. Well, that's all we have for tonight. Before we go, let's get everyone's final score predictions on camera so we can all look like fools once the game's over next week. So what do we got?
I think it's going to be a great game, but I'm going to go with the odds. I'm going to go with the odds in Las Vegas. I'm going to say 31-20 Carolina Panthers.
All right.
I'm not sure if you're right, but I'm going to pick this with my heart. Let's go 24-20 Denver Broncos.
This hurts me as a Patriots fan because I'm a hater and I want to see Peyton Manning lose, but I just think, he's a legend. This is his last game. I think he's going to find a way to pull it out. I got the Broncos 27-17.
Yeah, I got the Broncos too. Peyton Manning running off to the sunset 21-17.
All right. Well, we'll see how those shake out. Well, that's all we have for tonight. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you to Scott Hill, Siki Wong, Mike Stanish, Abby Farr, and Emily Casper for their help behind the scenes. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.